"I don't think you understand," I told Patricia Whitmore, her pearl necklace glinting in the sun. "This land is mine, not the HOA's, not the community's. Mine." For a moment, the smug president's smile faltered, and I swear I saw her jaw twitch. That was the first time I realized she knew the truth. But let me rewind, because in my neighborhood, scandal doesn't bloom overnight. It creeps in with whispers over freshly mowed lawns. It shows up tucked in pastel envelopes marked "Important Notice." It hides behind fake pleasantries at block parties where someone inevitably brings a Costco dip and a tray of store-bought cookies. That's how Patricia ran things. Tight-lipped, all smiles, and sharper than the shears she used to prune her roses. Everyone called her a visionary. I called her something else entirely, a thief in heels. The first sign of trouble came not in the form of a bulldozer, but a letter, cream-colored stationery with the HOA logo embossed in green at the top, as if that made the words inside sacred. Notice of dues increase, community expansion project. Expansion? I nearly choked on my coffee. I wasn't part of their HOA, never had been. My land bordered the development, a wide stretch of wooded acreage and rolling fields that had been in my family for decades. The HOA line stopped 3 streets away. Yet, Patricia's letter chirped on about new homes enriching the neighborhood and community fees adjusted accordingly. I thought it was a clerical error, until the bulldozers rolled in. I remember standing at the edge of my field one humid morning, dew still clinging to the grass, watching construction crews tear into the soil like it was theirs to claim. Patricia strutted behind them, clipboard in hand, a queen surveying her conquest. Rows of identical houses began to rise, cookie-cutter 2 stories with vinyl siding and shutters in approved neutral colors. Beige, gray, taupe, the kind of houses that screamed conformity. "Excuse me," I called out, marching over. The foreman barely glanced up, muttering something about permits. Patricia, however, stopped, adjusted her sunglasses, and gave me a smile that belonged on a real estate brochure. "Oh, you must be one of the adjoining property owners. Isn't it exciting? We're expanding the community. It'll do wonders for property values." "My property values are fine," I shot back, "and you're building on my land." Her smile didn't even flicker. "Don't be dramatic. Everything was filed with the county. We're perfectly within our rights." That was Patricia's superpower, lying with so much confidence people questioned their own sanity. But I wasn't about to be gaslit on my own soil. The gossip started almost immediately. Neighbors cornered me at the grocery store, pretending concern. "I heard you sold the land," one whispered, eyes darting. Another clucked her tongue. "Well, the HOA must have worked out something fair." The truth, Patricia had presented herself as the benevolent leader who'd secured extra lots for future families. And people ate it up. The HOA meetings became theater productions. Patricia, standing at the front of the clubhouse with her pearls and printed agendas, basked in applause as she unveiled glossy renderings of Whitmore Park, Phase 2. That's what she called my property, Whitmore Park. My blood boiled every time I heard it. I attended one meeting, uninvited of course, and stood in the back as Patricia held court. "We've successfully integrated 35 new homes into the association," she declared, flipping her hair like a local politician. "This expansion strengthens our community and ensures long-term stability." "Correction," I said loudly, my voice cutting through the applause. Heads turned. "You built on land that isn't yours. You've stolen from me." Patricia froze, just for a heartbeat before chuckling into the microphone. "Well, clearly there's been some confusion. Let's address questions after the agenda, shall we?" The room buzzed with murmurs. I walked out, but not before locking eyes with her. Her smile didn't reach her eyes that night. Behind the scenes, I dug. County records, old surveys, dusty deeds in my father's handwriting. And, sure enough, there it was in black and white. Every square foot of those 35 homes sat squarely on land titled to me. They hadn't even tried to hide it. Patricia just gambled that I'd roll over like everyone else. But here's what Patricia never understood. I don't play by HOA rules. I don't need permission slips or bylaws to stand my ground. By the time the last roof went up, tension in the air was thick enough to slice. Homeowners waved from porches built on my soil, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath their feet. Patricia paraded around like she'd cemented her legacy, queen of a kingdom she didn't own. And me? I stood on the edge of my property line one twilight evening, watching porch lights flicker to life, the hum of air conditioners filling the warm night air. I gripped the old survey map in my hands, the ink smudged from my sweat. That's when I realized the war had only just begun. "I don't owe you a single penny," I said, slapping the letter down on Patricia's polished oak table. "And if you think you can fine me for not playing in your sandbox, you're out of your mind." Her eyes narrowed, the pearls at her neck catching the light as she leaned forward. "Everyone pays their dues eventually, one way or another. That's the thing about HOA drama. It never starts with fists or shouting. It starts with paper, certified letters with green slips tucked neatly inside, delivered by a mail carrier who has no idea they're handing you a grenade. The kind of envelope that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. That morning, mine smelled faintly of printer ink and smugness. Inside was a masterpiece of intimidation. Notice of past due assessments. According to Patricia, I now owed 3 months of community dues, plus late fees, plus a $250 special expansion assessment. Expansion, meaning those 35 cookie-cutter homes she'd planted on my land. The kicker? A threat that liens could be placed if I remained non-compliant. I laughed, out loud, alone in my kitchen with the letter. The audacity was Olympic level. I wasn't a member of her HOA. I'd never signed anything, never attended a vote, never agreed to their bylaws. Yet here was Patricia, writing as though my land and my wallet belonged to her. When I called her, she answered like a customer service rep reading from a script. "Patricia Whitmore, HOA President. How may I help you?" "You can start," I said, "by explaining why you're billing me for dues I don't owe." There was a pause, then the clipped sound of her nails drumming against the phone. "Well, technically, all properties within the development are subject to community obligations. My property isn't within your development." Her tone brightened like she was explaining math to a child. "It is now. Phase 2 was approved by the board and documented with the county. As a property owner, you benefit from shared services, road maintenance, landscaping, security. Naturally, you'll contribute." "You mean the services I already pay taxes for? On my own land?" "Sir," she said, voice dripping with false patience, "non-compliance carries consequences. I'd hate to see this escalate." That was Patricia's style. Threats wrapped in courtesy, daggers disguised as etiquette. 2 days later, a new letter arrived. This one wasn't mailed. It was taped to my front door in bold red print, "Final notice before action." I peeled it off, the tape leaving sticky residue on my glass, and read Patricia's latest power move. Late fees had doubled. The HOA board had voted to authorize legal action, and in an especially theatrical flourish, she'd added, "Homeowners who refuse to comply may face restricted access to community amenities." I snorted. Community amenities. She meant the pool 2 streets over, the playground with peeling paint, the recreation center that smelled like mildew, as if I'd ever set foot in those places. But I knew what she was really doing. This wasn't about amenities. This was about humiliation. Patricia wanted to paint me as the pariah, the troublemaker who thought he was above the rules. Word spread fast. At the grocery store, whispers trailed behind me like perfume. "Did you hear? He won't pay." At the gas station, one neighbor even muttered, "Dead beat," under his breath. Patricia had weaponized gossip. Her real army wasn't lawyers. It was lawn chair generals who believed every word she said. I decided to face her on her turf. The next board meeting. The clubhouse smelled of coffee and Lysol. the folding chairs arranged in stiff rows. Patricia presided at the front like a judge, gavel in hand, her smile rehearsed. When she spotted me in the back, her eyes flickered with annoyance, then calculation. "We'll begin with outstanding assessments," she said smoothly, glancing at her agenda. "Several homeowners remain delinquent, but one case in particular has become notable." Murmurs rippled through the room. She looked directly at me. "Some individuals believe they are exempt from community responsibilities. That's unfortunate, because when one person refuses to contribute, everyone suffers." I stood. "I'm not refusing. I was never part of your HOA. This land isn't yours, Patricia, and no board vote changes that." Gasps scattered across the room. Patricia gave a pitying smile, tilting her head like a kindergarten teacher. "Ignorance of bylaws doesn't absolve responsibility. Perhaps you should have attended more meetings before making accusations." The crowd chuckled uneasily, siding with her. That was her brilliance, turning every confrontation into a stage where she played the martyr, and I was cast as the villain. But I didn't storm out. Not this time. I sat back down, silent, and let her bask in her applause. Because as much as Patricia loved control, she never noticed when someone stopped fighting and started planning. Later that night, I spread my documents across the kitchen table. The survey maps, the deed with my father's signature, the records proving what she already knew but refused to admit. The homes she claimed as part of her empire stood on land she didn't own. My land. That's when the fury sharpened into focus. Patricia thought she was waging a war of letters and fines, but I had something she didn't: control. And as I traced my finger along the old map, stopping at the line where her shiny new houses now stood, I realized just how much power sat quietly in my hands. I smiled to myself, not because I'd won yet, but because Patricia had no idea what was coming. The lever groaned as I pulled it down, and then came the roar, a sound like the earth itself was tearing open. Water surged forward, unstoppable, hungry, spilling through the gates and rushing toward the houses Patricia had sworn were hers to command. Funny thing about water, it doesn't care about bylaws. It doesn't pause for a board vote or stop at a property line. It flows wherever it pleases, and in that moment, it pleased me to watch it claim what was always mine. Let me rewind, though, because flooding an entire neighborhood doesn't just happen overnight. It starts with patience, with sitting through months of Patricia's smugness, the letters, the threats, the way she wielded her HOA gavel like it was the hammer of God. And while she was busy grandstanding, I was busy remembering something most people in this neighborhood had long forgotten: the dam. My grandfather built it decades ago, back when the land was farmland and not vinyl-sided suburbia. A simple earthen structure with a steel gate, designed to hold back runoff from the creek during rainy seasons. Nothing grand, just practical. Over the years, it became part of the background, hidden by trees and weeds, ignored by everyone but me. The HOA had no idea it existed, let alone that I still had the key to the gatehouse, and that key felt heavy in my pocket every time Patricia taped another final notice to my door. The breaking point came one Saturday afternoon at yet another board meeting. Patricia stood at the front of the clubhouse, pearls gleaming, voice pitched with fake concern. "This kind of delinquency cannot be tolerated," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd before locking on me. "When one homeowner refuses to pay their share, it undermines the entire community." "I'm not your homeowner," I shot back, "and that land isn't your community." She smiled sweetly, the kind of smile that hides a knife. "The courts will decide otherwise. I've already spoken with legal counsel. By the time this is over, we'll have liens in place, and you'll have no choice but to comply." Gasps rippled through the room. That was Patricia's strategy: public shaming. Every glare, every whispered comment afterward was another stone she stacked on her throne. But I didn't storm out this time. I simply sat down, folded my arms, and thought about the dam. The rains came the following week. Heavy, relentless, the kind that makes the gutters overflow and turns lawns into marshes. Water pooled behind the dam, rising higher each day, pressing against the steel gate. The ground squelched under my boots when I went to check it, the air damp and earthy, thick with the smell of wet leaves. That's when the idea stopped being just an idea. I waited until evening, when the sky was bruised with storm clouds and the neighborhood was lit up with porch lights and the faint hum of televisions behind closed curtains. The gatehouse door creaked as I opened it, the key sliding into the old lock with a satisfying click. Inside, the metal lever stood waiting, rusted but sturdy, like it had been holding its breath for this very moment. When I pulled it, the groan of machinery echoed through the trees, followed by the rush, the violent, beautiful rush, of water breaking free. It poured through the channel, gathering speed, frothing white as it tore toward the neat little rows of Patricia's kingdom. From my vantage point on the ridge, I saw it hit the first street. Cars bobbed like bath toys, headlights flickering underwater. Lawns disappeared in seconds, mulch and decorative gravel swirling away like confetti. Homeowners scrambled, their shouts carried on the wind, panicked, desperate. And at the center of it all, Patricia, standing in her driveway, heels sinking into the mud, screaming orders that no one could hear over the roar. She'd built her empire on land that wasn't hers, and now that empire was drowning. I should have felt guilty. Maybe a better man would have. But watching those beige houses, symbols of her arrogance, submerge under the weight of my water, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Justice, in its purest form, doesn't arrive in courtrooms or board meetings. Sometimes it arrives as a flood. The water didn't wipe the neighborhood away completely. It wasn't biblical, but it was enough. Enough to ruin lawns, damage foundations, fill basements with 3 feet of muddy water. Enough to leave 35 families furious, panicked, demanding answers. And all those angry eyes turned not on me, but on Patricia. That night, as the storm clouds finally broke and the rain eased, I stood on my porch and listened. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors argued in raised voices. Patricia's voice cut above them all, shrill and desperate, insisting everything was under control. But I knew better. Her reign had cracked wide open. I leaned against the railing, the night air cool against my face, and thought, this is only the beginning. Because floods recede, water dries, but lawsuits, those linger, and Patricia was about to find herself very, very alone.